The old metal fire doors slammed shut ahead of me as I tried to make my way down the dark hallway. Welcome to Paranormal Christian. Let's tell stories. In 2017, I was scheduled to bring some magic tricks to the Arcadia Academy Theater. Some of you that know me know that I'm a professional stage magician by trade. For 30 years now, 32 to be exact, I have been performing magic and illusion shows at different events and banquets and parties and such. And so I am a stage illusionist and I'm also a pastor. And I have used the magic trick shows as a ministry for many, many years to grab people's attention and then illustrate the gospel and Bible lessons. So in 2017, I think I said 2014, around 2014, I was scheduled to bring my illusion show to the Arcadia Academy in Arcadia Valley, which you've heard me talk about on a lot of episodes and a lot of the mysterious things that have gone on in that building. Because of the equipment that I was bringing with me, I had to go over a couple of days early to get everything moved into the building, into their theater. They have an old theater there, which was part of the Catholic school, where they would put on presentations. The students that lived there and attended school there could put on plays and musical concerts and things like this. Old wooden chairs and a wooden floor, and it's a beautiful little theater. And so I had taken my show in, and it was strange because the very first night that I was there, this was October. They actually had me for a weekend of Halloween events that they were doing. And I was in the building by myself. Not only was I in the theater by myself, there was nobody in that part of the building at all. There was a lot of space between me and anywhere else that anybody would be. And the first night that I went in, it was so strange, it was so eerie being in there. I was setting up my equipment, but the place was very, very quiet. The first thing that happened to me is I had thrown down some extension cords that I had brought with me for some of my sound equipment. And as I was preparing some of the props, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something moving. And I looked down and I began to watch the extension cord unroll itself. I couldn't believe what I was seeing until I realized how cold it had been outside and how warm it was inside. And that tightly wound spool of extension cord was simply just relaxing with the temperature. And so the uncoiling wasn't as extreme as it had seemed in my mind at first. Nonetheless, it was a little unsettling. And so I continued and I was thinking about this and I thought, well, I'm going to turn some music on. And so I turned the music on my phone. I was playing it from YouTube or some internet radio or something. And suddenly the volume on my phone began to get loud and quiet and loud and quiet. I still have never figured out why it did that. So after setting up my equipment for a couple of days, I think it was the third day that I was there, and my wife and children had joined me for the rest of what needed done. Perhaps it was the day of the show. I can't remember right now. And I said, I've got to use the restroom. Now, in order to use the restroom is not right next to the theater. You have to leave the double doors of the theater, which are on the side of the theater. You have to turn left out of those double doors and go to the end of the hallway, turn left through more double doors, turn right. When you turn right at this point, you're making your way down through the rooms, the boarding rooms where students used to live that stayed there at the boarding school, And so I go through the double doors of the theater. I go through the next set of double doors. I'm making my way down the dark, wide hallway past bunking rooms. Rooms for the girls, rooms for the boys. Rooms for the girls, rooms for the boys. One more set of double doors. Metal fire doors, by the way, are these doors that are throughout the building. Of course, if there was ever a fire, the hope is that these doors would be closed and stop the fire from going to the next area where people were living, where they were staying. I go through that set of double doors, and finally I'm to the restrooms. There are two sets of restrooms, if I remember correctly. The one for the girls, I believe, is in pink tile work. The The one for the boys was in blue tile work, I think. I would have to check that out. And so I go through that second set, or that third set of fire doors. I enter the restrooms on my right. I am now a good ways away from the theater, away from my family, away from any music being played. I use the restroom and I go to wash my hands. As I finish washing my hands and I get ready to leave the restroom, I hear the fire doors right outside slam shut. And I realize that my children obviously are trying to scare me. And so I jump out as quickly as I can. I open those fire doors. And as I do, my children are not there. And the next set of doors slam shut. I run as quickly as I can. I thought, wait a minute, they didn't have enough time to get all the way down through there. I got out of here really quick. But in my mind, all of this happening in a few seconds, I thought, well, maybe not. I jump through the next set of double doors, no children. The next set of doors slams shut, the third and final set of doors. At this point, I know my children did not have time to pull this off. Just in case, I go through very quickly, no children. I make my way back into the theater. My children are there. They are playing. They're toward the front of the room near the stage. My wife is on the stage. They seemed quite relaxed. They did not seem out of breath. They did not seem like they had been up to anything, any trickery or fooling me. Yet I could not let it go. And I said, we've got a couple of little ghosts around here. And the way that they looked at me, I was pretty sure they didn't know what I was talking about. But I still couldn't let it go because something had slammed those doors, I thought, in an attempt to scare me. And I said, a couple of little ghosts? And they're just looking at me. I said, I think we got a couple ghosts around here. My wife realized what I was getting at, that I was suggesting that my children had done something, although she didn't know what yet. And my wife said, there are no ghosts here. The kids have been here the whole time. They haven't been out of the room. And at this point, I got a really strange, sinking feeling inside of me because I knew that no one was occupying that part of the building. I had been down that very dark hallway by myself. I had walked past a lot of open doors to these rooms on the side where children used to live and stay many years ago. I don't know how close we were to any of the quarters for the sisters that took care of them, for the nuns that lived there and cared for them. But I got such a sick feeling inside as I realized that A, those doors definitely had slammed right before me all the way down the hall, and B, it probably was not at the hands of a human being playing a trick on me. I shared this story with a couple of friends. One of them was a friend that actually attended the show. When he left that night, he took a picture of that dark hallway and he superimposed a photograph of a ghost, and then he sent it to me. He said, hey, I took this picture. And so, he was trying to mess with me with that. I have told this story to a number of people. A few weeks ago, though, I shared it with the new owner of Arcadia Academy. We were there for a wedding. I told you in a past episode about my wife having a strange experience as she had been decorating there for a wedding. And I was talking to the owner, and I said, hey, I had this weird thing happen. And she said, oh, that is strange. She said, years ago, she said, a young lady actually committed suicide in that restroom. What a strange feeling. What a strange feeling went through me as I realized I was in that exact area of the building where a terrible, terrible tragedy had taken place. She said, yeah, apparently the young lady was pregnant with the bishop's baby that was in charge there at the time. The hair on my arms stood up, instant goosebumps. Now, I can't know or even suggest or think that that was in somehow connected to my story. But what a strange feeling. It is also the same part of the building where the Occurrence took place that I shared with you about my cousin making beds with a nun and stretching those bed sheets. They were pulling against each other, only to find out later that that nun that she had helped make beds didn't even exist in the building at the time. All of this in that same area that I was in using the restroom. You know, there are people that have a theory about certain types of hauntings. They don't necessarily believe that a spirit resides in an area, that's haunting and playing pranks. They believe in something called a residual haunting, residue. They believe that when great tragedies take place in our world, such as a murder, such as a suicide, such as a terrible crime or a terrible trauma, abuse, they believe that there is an energy released at the time of that tragedy. They almost think of it as an energy photograph that marks certain places, certain geographical locations. It's like a marker of the terrible thing that happened there. Do I believe in residual hauntings? I don't think I have a particular belief on this type of thing. But I know that God has made a marvelous creation. And I know there are a lot of things that we don't understand. I know that everything around us contains a certain amount of energy. A certain amount of vibration can even be recorded and measured inside of, obviously, living organisms and the things around this. What do I think about energy being torn, quote unquote, torn at the time of a tragedy? I'm not sure. If we know that a murder or something terrible has taken place in an area, do we ever feel strange things when we go into that area? Yeah, I've always chalked that up as to just the awareness of what happened, just the memory. Is that somehow recorded in nature? Is that somehow there in what people call a residual haunting? I guess I'm open to listen and to consider. I don't think that a residual haunting of that nature can slam fire doors shut. And I don't know for sure. I didn't watch the fire doors slam. I heard them. I heard them loud and clear. I don't know what I think about what happened there that night, but I know that it freaks me out. I'm curious if people have some Arcadia Academy stories that I've never heard before, or maybe experiences similar to the one I've just shared, wherever in the world that you live. At the very least, it's interesting to think about. I'm not making this up. That's what happened to me, or at least it's what I believe happened. It's what I heard with my ears. What are your thoughts? Would you send us your thoughts? Would you send us your opinions? Or maybe you feel like you have some answers. Would you follow us here on Paranormal Christian? And would you visit paranormalchristian.com? Grab you a Paranormal Christian hoodie or t-shirt, trucker cap, coffee mug. You can drink your coffee while you watch the new episodes. Fill out the contact form on the website and keep those stories coming. And keep them PC.